He had no idea a single phone call had already changed the course of his life. A call made not out of fear, but out of assumption. Not because of a weapon or a crime in progress, but because he looked like someone, looked like a threat. To Raymond Weller, a retired white man living on a quiet street in Southbridge, Missouri, that was enough. It was 7:02 p.m. on a Tuesday. Dorian Harper, 22, had just clocked out of his shift at Southbridge Market. He was heading to his grandmother's house, a routine he'd followed nearly every night since starting work to support her and his little sister, Nia. His black hoodie wasn't pulled over his head yet. The wind hadn't gotten that sharp. He walked with one earbud in and one dangling loose, a habit from years of his grandma warning, "Boy, you need to keep one ear open." That night, he did. The streets were quiet. The leaves, brown and crunchy, blew in scattered circles along the sidewalks. His sneakers tapped rhythmically as he turned onto Maplewood Lane. He liked that block, big trees, wide yards, dogs barking behind fences. His girlfriend, Jordan, lived a few minutes farther down. He didn't know a man in one of those houses was staring at him through the blinds, phone already in hand. He didn't know that the man had made this kind of call before, 12 times in fact, all for young black men, none resulting in arrests, none resulting in anything until now. At 7:06 p.m., Officer Kevin Larson sped toward Maplewood Lane. No sirens, no body cam activated until the last second. He saw a young black man in dark clothes and decided that was enough. Larson would later say Dorian moved suspiciously, that he reached for something, that he failed to comply. But video told a different story. By 7:16 p.m., Dorian Harper lay bleeding on the sidewalk, his sandwich beside him, his phone buzzing with Jordan's text, "You almost here?" October 12th had been uneventful for Dorian. He'd stocked shelves, rearranged a display for Halloween candy, and helped an elderly man carry bags to a car. The store manager, Mr. Reed, joked about giving Dorian a raise, something he half meant. Dorian laughed, said goodbye, stepped out into the fading golden light. His backpack was light. A notebook, an energy drink, his charger. He zipped it up tight. His hoodie was a gift from Jordan, a black cotton pullover with small white text on the sleeve, "Build your own world." He turned left at Elm Street, nodding to Mrs. Carson as she watered her bushes. He passed a group of middle schoolers on bikes, shouting and racing. He walked like he always did, confidently, casually, with his mind half on music, half on how to tell his grandma he was thinking of taking a semester off. The air smelled like with smoke and damp leaves. Familiar, comforting. He reached into his hoodie pocket to check his phone. One new message from Jordan. He smiled, then looked up and saw the flashing blue lights. Raymond Weller lived alone, 67, retired contractor, had a reputation in the neighborhood for being overly watchful. He had security cameras no one believed he actually monitored. His two Dobermans barked at everyone. Most kids avoided his yard altogether. Weller told neighbors he was protecting the block. But quietly, many wished he'd just mind his own business. At 7:01 p.m., Weller spotted Dorian through his living room window. He squinted, lifted his phone. 911, what's your emergency? There's a guy walking down Maplewood Lane, real sketchy looking. Black male, hoodie, dark pants. Keeps looking around like he's checking out houses. The dispatcher asked standard questions. Was he holding a weapon? Acting aggressively? Weller said no, but added he's just acting suspicious. The call was logged as non-urgent. 3 minutes later, Weller called again. He just stopped in front of my house. I think he ducked behind the hedge. Might be hiding. You gotta send someone now. This time, the report was upgraded. Officer Kevin Larson accepted the dispatch. He didn't ask questions. Larson's personnel file included 5 excessive force complaints, all dismissed by Internal Affairs. A former military police officer, he'd been with Southbridge PD for 6 years. He was known for being decisive. Some said aggressive, others dangerous. He believed in control, obedience, deference. When Larson arrived on Maplewood Lane, he didn't turn on his siren. His dash cam wouldn't activate until 7:16 p.m. The camera from a nearby home, however, recorded everything. Larson stepped out, hand on his sidearm. "Hey, you there?" Dorian turned, headphones still in. "Yes." "Hands up. Get on the ground." Dorian paused, unsure. Larson stepped forward, gun drawn. "Sir, I'm just walking." Then a movement, a step, a hand lowered to adjust his backpack strap. Larson fired. One shot, center mass. Dorian collapsed. The first paramedics on the scene later testified they were unsure of the scene's safety. They delayed until backup arrived. Dorian lay motionless for over 6 minutes. Larson stood nearby, arms crossed, staring into the distance. He reached for something, he said again. But body cam footage didn't support that. Nor did neighbor footage. Nor did the sandwich still wrapped in wax paper beside Dorian's hand. The police report would be sanitized. The press release carefully worded. But the neighborhood had seen it, and someone uploaded the full video. It went viral. By midnight, #Dorian Harper was trending. Jordan saw the video before she knew it was Dorian. Then she recognized the hoodie, the shoes, the backpack. She screamed so loudly her neighbor thought someone broke in. Dorian's room had trophies and textbooks, posters of Malcolm X, Chance the Rapper, and a giant laminated schedule he'd made for his college classes. He was studying criminal justice, wanted to become a lawyer. His grandmother, Myra Harper, raised him after his mom died in a car accident when Dorian was 9. He became protective of his younger sister, Nia, who was just 7 at the time. Dorian was always older than his age, Myra said. He'd fix the kitchen sink, then turn around and help Nia with her homework. He'd saved up for his first car, but still chose to walk most days, said it helped him think. Said it made the city feel smaller, safer. He was wrong. The morning after Dorian was shot, candles appeared on the sidewalk where he fell. Signs, justice for Dorian. Walking while black isn't a crime. Pastor Eugene Graves of Mount Olive Baptist held a vigil. Jordan spoke, voice trembling. Nia cried silently. Myra sat with her hands clutched, eyes fixed on the pavement. Reporters came. Cameras. Protesters. Then came counter-protesters too. Thin blue line flags. Support our police. By day 3, Southbridge was divided, and that's when Cynthia Holt arrived. A former FBI analyst turned civil rights investigator. Quiet, sharp, unrelenting. She didn't come for the cameras. She came for the truth. Cynthia Holt stood outside the Southbridge Police Department, the weight of the case pressing down on her like a storm cloud. Years in the FBI had taught her how to read between the lines, and this wasn't just about a tragic shooting. It was about something darker. Deeper. Inside, Sheriff Nolan West guarded the department's official narrative like a fortress. But Holt could see cracks in his calm demeanor. There were whispers, tensions, and, most dangerously, silence where answers should have been. Cynthia began by dissecting every piece of evidence. The 911 calls, Officer Larson's body cam footage, witness statements, and most importantly, the video that had gone viral. She noticed discrepancies, omissions, and moments where protocol had been ignored. She tracked down Raymond Weller, the caller, and uncovered a chilling pattern. 12 false reports over 2 years, all targeting black men walking or standing in Southbridge neighborhoods. None had led to arrests or charges, but each had escalated police presence unnecessarily. Neighbors started to come forward quietly, afraid but determined to share what they knew. The community's pain boiled over. Protests grew larger, fueled by anger and heartbreak. Jordan became a face of the movement, young, grieving, and fiery. The police responded with force. Tear gas, arrests, and escalating tensions threatened to turn Southbridge into a battleground. Meanwhile, Cynthia uncovered internal police communications indicating a deliberate effort to control the narrative. Evidence was lost or suppressed. Officers whispered about making examples to keep order. Myra Harper, Nia, and Jordan faced an unrelenting media circus. They spoke out bravely, demanding justice for Dorian. Attorney Marcus Hale took the case, promising to expose every lie. But with every step forward, threats came too. Calls in the night, messages telling them to stay silent. Still, they pushed on, fueled by the memory of Dorian, a young man whose only crime was existing while black. In a late-night meeting, Cynthia confronted Officer Larson with evidence of his history of aggression and the contradicting footage. His defensive answers cracked under pressure. The real turning point came when Cynthia discovered that Larson had been in communication with Weller before the shooting, suggesting possible collusion. As the investigation widened, it became clear this was not an isolated incident, but part of a systemic failure, a lethal combination of racial bias, fear, and unchecked power. Just as Cynthia prepared to release her findings, a shocking new piece of evidence surfaced, a second video from a nearby house showing a man in plain clothes removing something from the scene moments after the shooting. Questions exploded. Who was this man? What was he hiding? The police department went into lockdown. Cynthia received threats. The Harper family faced their darkest hour. And in the shadows, the real story behind the title was only beginning to unfold. The moment Cynthia Holt received the anonymous tip with the new video, her pulse quickened. It was shaky footage taken from a security camera across the street. A man in plain clothes, moving quickly, bending down by the police cruiser. In his hands, something small and metallic, a cell phone, a weapon, a piece of evidence. She paused the clip, zoomed in, and enhanced the image as best as technology would allow. The man's face was obscured by shadows, but there was something familiar about his gait. She sent the video immediately to Marcus Hale. "Marcus, we've got another player here. Someone tampering with the scene." Marcus' reply came within minutes. "This changes everything. We need to find out who this is." Meanwhile, in the dimly lit back room of a rundown motel, Logan Tate leaned back in his chair, swirling a glass of bourbon. He was the man in the video. A former mercenary, Logan had been hired quietly to manage the situation after the shooting. Officially, no one would admit his involvement. He was the fixer, the man who cleaned up loose ends, and he knew exactly how deep the corruption went. But this job was different. This time, Logan saw the cracks in the system. He saw that this cover-up could ignite a firestorm bigger than anyone anticipated. Back at Southbridge Police Department, Sheriff Nolan, West struggled to maintain control. The pressure was suffocating. Internally, some officers were uneasy. Rumors of bribes, falsified reports, and intimidation tactics spread like wildfire. Larson, once cocky and defiant, was now withdrawn, haunted by the consequences. Cynthia, with Marcus and the Harper family at her side, pushed forward, demanding transparency. The media caught wind of the second video. Headlines exploded. Public outrage surged. Dorian Harper stood at the front of a massive protest march. Thousands gathered, voices raised for justice. Dorian did not deserve to die because of a description. "We demand accountability." Jordan shouted into the microphone, his voice echoing through the city square. Protesters held signs with Dorian's face, calling for an end to racial profiling and police violence. The tension between civilians and law enforcement grew explosive. What started as a plea for justice threatened to spiral into chaos. Cynthia's relentless pursuit led her to uncover secret emails, deleted texts, and hidden files revealing a broader network of officers involved in similar shootings, each brushed under the rug. She confronted Sheriff West with the evidence, watching his face harden. "I'm doing what I can," he said grimly, "but the system isn't ready for this." The words felt hollow. Late one night, Cynthia received a cryptic message: "Stop digging, or you'll be next." The Harper family's home was vandalized. Tires slashed, windows shattered. Fear gripped them all, but they refused to back down. With Marcus's legal team rallying public support, the fight for justice took on new urgency. In a dramatic press conference, Cynthia revealed the tampering video, Larson's misconduct, and the troubling pattern of racial bias within the department. The police chief resigned. Investigations were launched. Yet, even as the truth surfaced, the question lingered: how many more Dorians had suffered similar fates? Just as the community celebrated a small victory, an encrypted file was leaked online, revealing the names of key figures orchestrating a cover-up at the state level. The story was far from over. The real puppet masters were still in the shadows, watching, waiting. Marcus Hale stood before a packed courtroom, the weight of the Harper family's hopes resting heavily on his shoulders. His voice was steady but fierce as he laid out the case, not just for Dorian Harper, but for every victim lost to systemic injustice. The evidence shows a clear pattern of racial profiling, deliberate misconduct, and a cover-up that goes beyond one officer. This isn't just about one tragic death, it's about a broken system that devalues black lives. The defense team was relentless, weaponizing every legal tactic to delay and discredit the case. They called on questionable witnesses, challenged evidence authenticity, and painted Dorian as a threat before his death. But Marcus countered with precision, presenting body cam footage, the tampering video, and testimony from whistleblowers within the police force who risked everything to speak out. Tensions flared as witnesses faced intimidation outside court. Media frenzy amplified every word. Outside the courtroom, protests swelled, community leaders rallied, and politicians scrambled to respond. Some voiced support, others stayed silent, wary of backlash. Marcus navigated the political minefield carefully, knowing that winning the legal battle meant fighting in the court of public opinion as well. In a surprising twist, some officers broke ranks, providing damning testimony against Larson and his supervisors. These whistleblowers shared how orders came from higher up to handle certain suspects without question. Their courage added new momentum to the case, shining a light into the darkest corners of the department. The courtroom became a battleground of wills. Larson took the stand, evasive and defensive. Marcus's cross-examination was relentless, exposing inconsistencies and forcing Larson to admit to moments of excessive force and false reporting. The jury watched closely as the truth unfolded layer by layer. For Myra Harper and her children, the trial was an emotional roller coaster, reliving trauma while clinging to hope. Their courage inspired many, but also made them targets for harassment and threats. Marcus made sure the family had protection and counseling, knowing the fight was as psychological as it was legal. As closing arguments neared, tension gripped the city. The legal battle had become a symbol of a larger movement, a reckoning with systemic racism and police accountability. Marcus implored the jury, "This is your moment to stand for justice, for truth, and for every life unjustly taken." The jury retired to deliberate, and the world waited with bated breath. Days felt like years as the jury deliberated. The courthouse was surrounded by reporters, protesters, and community members holding their breath. Finally, the jury filed back into the courtroom. Marcus's heart pounded. The foreperson stood, voice steady but heavy. "We, the jury, find Officer Larson guilty of manslaughter and misconduct." Gasps echoed through the room. Relief, tears, and cautious hope washed over the Harper family. Larson's sentencing was scheduled for weeks later, but the victory felt bittersweet. The case had exposed deep wounds in Southbridge, wounds far from healing. Some officers resigned, others were suspended, but many questions remained unanswered. Cynthia Holt warned Harpers, "This is just the beginning. The system that allowed this still exists." Southbridge remained tense. While many celebrated the verdict, others resisted change. Protests continued, sometimes erupting into clashes with police. Local politicians faced pressure to reform policies, retrain officers, and increase transparency. Myra, Jordan, and Nia, though scarred, emerged as powerful advocates for justice. They founded a nonprofit dedicated to supporting families affected by police violence. Their voices reached national platforms, igniting conversations beyond Southbridge. Behind the scenes, Marcus and Cynthia prepared for the next fight: civil suits against the police department and calls for federal investigations. They knew dismantling systemic racism required more than one victory. One night, as Marcus left a community meeting, a car followed him closely. He caught a glimpse of a shadowed figure watching from the passenger seat. The fight for justice had only just begun, and the dangers were far from over. Marcus prepared the civil lawsuit against the Southbridge Police Department with painstaking care. The stakes were higher now: money damages, policy changes, and public scrutiny. The suit aimed not just to compensate the Harper family, but to force institutional accountability. Every piece of evidence uncovered in the criminal trial was woven into the case file. Internal memos, the tampering video witness statements, all laid bare the department's systemic failures. Meanwhile, pressure mounted on the Department of Justice to open a federal investigation. Cynthia connected with an FBI Civil Rights Task Force. Their preliminary inquiries hinted at widespread abuses extending beyond Southbridge. Federal agents requested documents, interviewed officers anonymously, and quietly coordinated with whistleblowers. The strain weighed heavily on everyone involved. Marcus found himself targeted with veiled threats and attempts to discredit his work. Myra grappled with PTSD, struggling to balance her grief with her new role as a public figure. Cynthia faced political pushback within the FBI as local officials resisted federal interference. The city teetered between hope and unrest. Community forums were packed with residents demanding justice, but others called for caution, fearing more violence. Local clergy, activists, and politicians attempted uneasy dialogue, but trust was fragile. An anonymous insider within the department handed Cynthia a flash drive containing a trove of incriminating emails and audio recordings. They detailed orders from high-ranking officials to suppress complaints, manipulate evidence, and intimidate witnesses. This revelation threatened to blow the case wide open. News outlets seized on the leaked documents. The story went national. Pressure on the police department intensified. Calls for resignations, reforms, and independent oversight became louder. One evening, Cynthia's office was broken in two. Files were rifled through, but nothing stolen. Marcus received an anonymous warning: "Stop before you dig too deep." The Harper family's home was vandalized again. The fight for truth was putting lives at risk. Marcus called a press conference alongside Myra and Cynthia. "My family's pain is shared by many," Myra said, voice steady despite tears. "We will not be silenced. We demand justice, real justice." The federal investigation was officially launched. The civil suit moved forward with renewed vigor. But the puppet masters behind the cover-up lurked in shadows, ready to strike. The federal courtroom buzzed with reporters and onlookers as Marcus Hale took his place one final time before the judge. The civil trial against the Southbridge Police Department had become a national event, not for the spectacle, but for what it symbolized. Over 3 weeks, Marcus had presented a damning portrait of institutional racism. Emails, audio files, whistleblower testimony. The flash drive had revealed years of misconduct buried beneath bureaucracy and silence. The defense tried to deflect, but the truth was undeniable. When the verdict was read, $42 million in damages awarded to the Harper family, and a court-mandated federal consent decree to restructure the department, the courtroom erupted. Applause, tears, a crack in the armor of a broken system. Federal oversight was installed. Officers implicated in the cover-up resigned or faced charges. Training protocols were overhauled. Independent review boards were formed. It wasn't perfect, change never is, but it was a start. The city of Southbridge had bled, protested, mourned, and risen. And now, finally, it could begin to heal. Myra Harper established the Dorian Foundation, a national nonprofit providing legal support and grief counseling to families affected by police violence. Nia and Jordan Oldernow became voices for youth-led justice initiatives. Marcus continued fighting civil rights cases. Cynthia took early retirement from the FBI and joined the foundation full-time, her resolve steeled by the war she'd survived. On the 2-year anniversary of Dorian's death, a crowd gathered beneath a new mural in Southbridge, his face rising above a sea of candles and flowers. Myra stepped up to the podium. "My son's life was stolen, but his story, our story, forced the world to look in the mirror. This fight doesn't end with a verdict. It begins with every one of us who refuses to look away." She looked out over the crowd. No more silence. No more forgetting. Months later, a bill passed in Congress, the Harper Reform Act, mandating national police accountability measures and funding for independent investigation units. Dorian's name, once just a statistic, had become a movement.